everyone. Hopefully you guys can hear me okay at the back. Yes, great. Well, thank you for the opportunity. Really excited to be here and talk about my journey at Oxford Dynamics and all the great things we've achieved and the challenges we face on a day-to-day basis. So yeah, very excited to share that. So before I dive into Oxford Dynamics, I'll talk about my journey to get to this point a little bit, and then we'll talk about the company. So I originally come from India. So I moved to the UK when I was 18 years old, which is quite a brave step. If I thought now, looking back, I think about it. So I finished high school, and then I insisted that I want to go to the UK for my higher education to my parents. And, you know, as a teenager does, I insisted and rebelled, and after 5-6 months, they conceded. And I found myself in Scotland pursuing aerospace engineering. And I did that. And afterwards, I went to Cranfield University, where I did my master's in space engineering and astronautics. And I was always fascinated by the entrepreneurial landscape. I knew I wanted to get there. I just didn't know how, because I come from a family of teachers and professors. My dad is a professor retired professor in mathematics, and my mom is a teacher. So all I knew was, well, I have to be either a scientist or an engineer when I grew up, which I did. After I finished my master's, I just found myself thinking, I want to learn about entrepreneurism. I want to learn about business development. I want to learn about strategy. I just didn't know how to do that. So one day, as one does, I don't know how many of you have gone through this, but it's really hard at that time, it was really hard for non-EU citizens to get visa or sponsored for visa. So I kind of reached out to a lot of space organizations, got a lot of no's, wrote really grumpy letters to big organizations saying, well, why would you waste my time if you didn't want to recruit me? You don't have visa, you tell me up front. When you have nothing to lose, it's amazing the kind of things you don't mind saying. So I did that, and then a friend of mine was working for a company called Oxford Space Systems, which you might know, on campus. And I was catching up with her and said, can you give me CEO's number? And she was like, you're going to call him, aren't you? I said, yes, I am. Like, okay, you're not going to let it go. I will share the number. But promise me you're not going to call him today because it's evening already. You call him tomorrow morning so I can also, you know, prep him that you're going to call. Of course, I won't do that. I go home, first thing I do is call Mike Lawton, who used to be my boss at Oxford Space Systems. And I think first thing I said to Mike was, I didn't even introduce myself. I said, do you have a job? Got to the point because I was desperate. And as you know, Mike is great. He said, well, that's great. What's your name? Do you want to introduce yourself? Let's have a chat. I'm just stepped out of dinner. And we did. We talked for 5 minutes, said, I like what I heard. Why don't you come in for an interview? So I went in for an interview kind of a week later after a long day of interviews. I think there was about 3 presentations we did. Multiple interviews with Mike, with the CTO, with other parts of the company. I was told by the end of it, you got the job. That was a great result, and I couldn't be happier. So I worked at Oxford Space Systems under Mike's guidance, even though I wanted to kill him for the first 6 months because I knew nothing about business development. And here was a founder and entrepreneur trying to teach someone who's coming from engineering background how to be an entrepreneur. So we didn't really get along well for the first 6 months, but I think we found our middle ground. And we worked together, achieved some great things at Oxford Space Systems, moved into the new building. I was part of the team at that time. And it was time to kind of let go of my career at Oxford Space Systems in 2018, when I was, I think, catching up with Doug, who is in the audience as well from In Space Missions. There we go. Doug said, well, do you want to come work with me. So before you decide what you want to do. So I said, yes, that would be great. So I worked with Doug and Tony at InSpace Missions for about a year as their head of business development. But Doug, thank you for your patience. Even though I worked part-time, I was planning the journey I was planning to take with Oxford Dynamics. So thank you, Doug and Tony, for your support with that. So after a year, left InSpace Missions and then co-founded Oxford Dynamics. And that was with Mike Lawton and Dr. Eddie Jackson. So three of us founded the company. In terms of the business opportunity, one of the things that we learned while working in space and defense was less than 10% of the data was being utilized for decision-making in defense and national security. And that kind of stayed with us. So we said, is there any way we can develop AI such that we can allow users to utilize maybe more than 5 to 10% of the data to make decisions? And AI was all the talk of the town back in the day. So we said, and Eddie's PhD was in AI as well. So why don't we start developing our own models, which we did. So transformer type architectures, some of you might know what they are. I'm assuming people know what ChatGPT is, large language models are. So they are large language models. They even existed back in the day, back in 2018, 2019. So they were actually called transformer type architectures. And we started developing those. So won the first DASA bid, did some foundational work on that. We also develop a lot of robotics as well. And where we want to get to is bring those two worlds together. But when we started developing on those models, as it goes, as any entrepreneur will tell you, it's never easy. So we said, okay, we can do all this with DASA funding. Look what we have already achieved. But if we got more money, look what we can do. And when we put that vision on board, defense said, oh, you're crazy. There's no way you can achieve that. And where we wanted to get to was a vision like ChatGPT. And no one bought that at that time, really. A year later, ChatGPT was released, which was a blessing in disguise for us, which opened defense and national security customers' eyes to, wow, what is feasible with these kind of technologies? So they came back to us and said, okay, we want to utilize these technologies. We know we can't use them directly. Is there any way OD can help us? So we started kind of putting the system together. I'll talk about what our flagship product is in a second. And when we started showing them how to use it, then there was a sense of not invented here. Well, we can do a better job than you guys can, as all customers do. And we went through that journey, but in the background, we continue kind of working on our product. And I would say just earlier this year, we won an enterprise contract, which was the first ever enterprise contract awarded by UK MOD for an AI-based technology. And the product is called AVIS, which stands for a very intelligent system, akin to Jarvis from Iron Man. Some of you might know the name. And the whole idea of AVIS is to ingest multimodal data, including textual data, imagery, thermal data, radar, LiDAR, and then present that information to the user in a human-like way. And we do that with a lot of explainability and transparency such that the user can actually understand why these systems or why these models are giving the answers they are, such that they can have more confidence in the answers that they're seeing and also make decisions based on the answers that are being generated by these models. So in addition to that, we also won a really big contract on the robotics side, which Mike is here. Mike, maybe raise your hand. So if you're interested on the work we're doing on robotics, please come talk to us or him after. Very happy to. So we wouldn't have achieved all this, right, without collaboration and partnership. We are very thankful for, well, UK Space Agency, European Space Agency. We're also doing a lot of work on the space applications. You can imagine how we can utilize these technologies for space domain awareness, for geointelligence analysis, so on and so forth. Beyond that, a lot of support from the UK MOD, DASA, DSTL. We're now working with organizations and projects we never thought would be feasible when we started this journey. Overall, it's not easy to be an entrepreneur. It's 6 years later, we still, I think on the way here, me and Mike were just chatting, and we asked the question, why are we doing this? Really difficult. There's nothing enjoyable about it. on a day-to-day basis. It's an absolute grind. And then we thought, yeah, perhaps we're in denial and a bit arrogant as well, because data obviously suggests that not a lot of entrepreneurs are successful building businesses. But we continue doing it, and we'll continue doing so. Thank you so much for your time, and happy to take any questions you have.
Thank you very much, Shefali. Have we got any questions in the room? I'm going to take this opportunity to ask one then. Going through your early experience, trying to find a job, how do you now recruit people into your business? How have you changed the ways that you recruit to maybe make it easier, make it more accessible?
Absolutely. So you can come chat to any of the people at OD. We believe in diversity, inclusion, and we don't just believe in it, we're actually making it happen. We go outside of the UK to recruit people. We have events kind of globally, really, where we kind of go to events and find people who we could potentially work with, and we sponsor their visas and we bring them over. And we don't think it's a big hurdle for the company. We believe this is one of the things we can do to enable people from different cultures, diversities, to come and be part of an amazing team. And we put that effort in.
Can I ask a question on AI? And it's interesting how you said you were ahead of the curve, first to speak, before ChatGPT. Many people say how, well, the AI revolution is only just beginning, and we don't know exactly what it looks like. So I'm curious to know, what do you think the big opportunities and big challenges are that can be seized by Oxford Dynamics going forward?
Yeah, I think where we eventually want to get to is edge compute, bringing those two worlds together. So how do you get an LLM type model and put that on an aircraft or a drone or any of those kind of infrastructure you can potentially think of? And I think world is your oyster if you can really solve that challenge.
Hi, great presentation. I'm Jane Price. I'm working with Sarah as transformation lead at RAL Space. So not a space question, but you've got power in this room. What are the 3 things maybe that they could do to support entrepreneurial organizations like your own to make it through those difficult first few years?
That's a very good question. I think first thing I would say is risk aversion. There's a lot of risk aversion whenever you're setting up a new company, and there's a lot of kind of naysayers, this is not feasible. So at the very beginning, finding like-minded people who can come together and give you that confidence that indeed what you're thinking about is a great idea, and one should go ahead and pursue that. Second, I would say, is access to talent. It's really difficult in the very beginning to recruit people, right? Because you do not have the resources, and that includes funding. So is there any way companies could collaborate together where, cross-fertilization of people and technologies is allowed? I can't think of the third one, but I'm sure I'll have a think and I'll get back to you. These are the 2 off the top of my head.
Hi, Shefali. That was a very emotional talk. I can understand, as I'm also from India. So I would like to ask you a simple question, that someone who is in a strong technical background in space engineering, and if they want to shift into the business side of the thing, what would be the first step that they should look for?
I think it's figuring out the gap you want to fill in the market. Disruption is very important. A lot of companies do kind of incremental improvements really well. But when you're going out there, really understanding what is the problem you're looking to solve, doing your market analysis. Finance is also figuring out the finance part is not easy. The business case is not easy. So I think just putting that whole strategy together before you go out to, convince the investors or whatever you're interested in, or even the customers, taking a step back and understanding what is it you plan to do is really important. And even in the beginning, if you can get letters of support or letters of intent from potential customers or collaborators, that's a tick as well. And last but not the least is passion. It is a tough, arduous journey. And I'm not saying that lightly. 6 years in, and I'd say I'm shattered. And I still have to keep going, and I want to keep going. So having the resilience that it is going to be tough, but even through those tough times, I'm going to stick through, and I'm going to keep it. I'm going to see it through till the end is very much needed.
Okay, time for one more.
You mentioned clients saying, "Oh, we can do a better job." You mentioned your clients telling you that they can do a better job. Did they then come back to you and say, "Oh no, we couldn't"?
Yeah, of course they did. But we made them say it.
How long does it take them to realize?
It took about, I would say, 4 to 6 months, if I remember correctly. And it was one of the most painful periods of companies' history looking back, because, you know, you're waiting on customers to figure out it's not easy. It's not, you know, it's not a matter of kind of not invented here. This is real innovation that we are doing. So, you know, patience had paid off in the end, and, you know, they recognized the value in what we're developing, and they got the enterprise contract.
And what did they tell you about their own efforts, or did they not say anything?
What did they tell us about?
What did they tell you about their own attempts, or did they not?
They did. And we talked about where they went wrong with their own attempts. So the idea is to not, you know, tell the customer it's a black box, right? We've got to build trust. We've got to gain their trust. And there's a mutual kind of trust journey we all have to go on. So it's about, here's how we did it, here's how we, and that they had the aha moment, we didn't think about that. However, because you've already ahead of the curve, you're already done that, why do we want to reinvent the wheel? So we had to take them on that journey, which really paid off.